Have you seen the shows The Bear and Adolescence? Both hit series have sparked a lot of conversation about trauma, the dangers of social media, the importance of parenting, the school system, institutions, prioritizing mental health, and how failure to protect children can play a role in shaping the individuals that are part of our society. As a survivor of abuse, I felt like these shows hit me particularly harder. It felt like I was watching a reenactment of a lot of the trauma I experienced constantly when I was growing up. Today, I want to continue reflecting about The Bear and Adolescence and how both shows have captured a lot of the traits from my three main abusers. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental illness and provide support to anyone diagnosed with C-PTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or any of the conditions or disorders mentioned in this podcast, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals or resources mentioned in this podcast are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you for joining me today. If you are listening on YouTube, a gentle reminder to hit the like button and subscribe to let me know this episode was helpful. I want to officially welcome any new listeners and also welcome back any returning listeners. And I hope that you're able to find something useful today on this episode. Quick check-in. Okay, I feel like, let's see, how do I feel? I am having a bit of a hard time even saying this out loud, and part of it is that fear that if I say it out loud, then something bad's gonna happen. And even though part of me knows that that's not how it works, things happen because they just happen, it's the way life works. Part of me feels a bit of that superstition of just don't say it out loud so nothing bad happens. So I'm gonna try to say it anyway. I am feeling a bit more settled. Lately, I've been feeling like I was experiencing a setback, and I felt like a lot of my mental state, the way I was feeling about the world, the way I was feeling about myself had taken some steps back. And I'm feeling now a bit more empowered again and a bit more in my, what I will call my inner adult. It's not that life is not challenging still, but there's something about life being challenging and on top of that having the trauma running everything and then just having life happen and managing things from a more realistic place with a lot of radical acceptance. And yeah, I'm feeling that a little bit more now. I will share with you a little nugget that I was sharing with a friend of mine I was talking to yesterday, and I was kind of running through the whole ordeal with the flying monkey situation I had going on. And basically, what I said to her, referring to my abusers, was the harder they push, the further they push me away. And what I meant by that was the harder they try to trample over my boundaries, the harder they try to get me to break the no contact, the more they work to get their way, the more I'm trying to double down even more than them and staying exactly where I am and not change a thing. And the reason I'm seeing it this way is because every time they do something, they're delaying my healing. For instance, I can only afford therapy twice a month. So every 2 weeks, I have a session. And I feel like my abusers, when they pull the new trick, they're in a way derailing my healing. And instead of going to the next therapy session to work on the things that I need to work on to improve my life, now I have to add this emergency thing that's happening because they did it again. And I would bet money that they are not trying to derail my healing on purpose, but that's what they're doing. And the more they do that, the longer I have to be no contact. And the more they show that they're not safe to break the no contact for. So I'm going to let that be what it is. I'll disclose even saying that here for a little bit risky to say it on the podcast, but I'm gonna sit with that and leave it be. Yeah, I feel like there's always so much stuff going on. I don't know if this happens to you or if you feel this way, but I feel like when I am in a situation where I'm catching up with someone, I try to pick like the three biggest things. In reality, there's like 12 things going on. So I treat this check-in in a similar way. Like if I was to give you the actual check-in on every single thing that's happening, I would probably have like more than one episode's length worth of stuff for the check-in alone. So I'm gonna wrap it up there and let's dive into this episode. So a few things to note. This episode will have spoilers on both the Bear and Adolescence. I also want to state very clearly that this illustration is not a disclosure of what roles my abusers actually play in my life. This is completely based on the behaviors and the similarities in the behaviors that the characters in these shows have with my actual abusers. Also, this episode is going to be from the survivor's point of view. So the focus on this episode is going to be on my experience seeing this as someone who has been abused by people like this. Also, this episode is part 2. So I invite you to check out part 1, which I will link to the notes, where I basically dived in a little bit more on the bear and on the experience of watching this content as a survivor as well. Lastly, I want to throw an additional trauma disclaimer, and it is that this episode will have a deeper discussion on emotional incest, which is a form of covert sexual abuse, which can be triggering. So listen to your body and take breaks or skip as needed. Now let's dive in. Last week I left off in the middle of doing my deep dive on Donna Berzatto, who is the mother on the show The Bear. So I'll start off by saying that The Bear is an impressive show. The acting, writing, the ability to build pressure, the level of accuracy the show has makes it well worth the binge. It's been nominated for awards and it has won the awards, and they are very well deserved. Now, the character that I've been doing this deep dive, Donna Berzatto, she's actually not a main character in the show. She's not in every episode. So this is a character that's considered a guest appearance by an actor. Jamie Lee Curtis plays Donna Berzatto, and Donna Berzatto is only on 3 episodes so far. And at the point when I'm recording this, it's only been up to season 3. We haven't seen the next season yet. I don't know if she's going to come back in season 4. Probably. I feel like the Donna Berzatto episode is kind of becoming a bit of a tradition now for the show. So we'll start off by adding to something I said last week about my real life Donna Berzatto. And it was that thing about ruining the race. If you haven't seen any pictures of me, I am Puerto Rican and I have darker skin. It's not super dark. It's kind of like somewhere in the middle. Some people have described my skin tone kind of like caramel toned. And the Donna Berzatto in my life was actually darker skin than me, which made her obsession with assigning more value to lighter skin tones very ironic and almost hypocritical. What I mean by this is, if you heard this last week, just stay with me. I'll make this a very brief recap. So the first time I dated someone who was darker skinned than me, because I honestly didn't give a shit about that, Donna did. And Donna was very critical and kept saying things like, you're ruining the race with this darker person. Like, think about the children you will have. And, you know, they'll be darker if you go darker. It always struck me when Donna would say things like this to me, because essentially they're telling me to date someone lighter. So taking in that I do not have white skin, based on that logic, if I date someone lighter skin than me, wouldn't that mean that they are ruining their race with me? You see what I mean? And this whole ruining the race thing was one of the few things that I picked up on early on, even though I wasn't healing back then. Just the way the logic worked there, it made no sense to me. And I'm going to go slightly deeper to illustrate what I mean. My Donna Berzatto had children with someone lighter skin than them. So by their own logic, if I am going to take this as the truth, then the person that chose her ruined the race with her. Imagine growing up with somebody telling you that your skin color is less valuable. And that's the thing. My Donna wasn't overtly saying you're less valuable, but I was treated like I was less valuable when they would say things like people that are darker are ruining races. Also, when Donna would not let me be outside for too long because they claimed that the sun was going to darken my skin even more than it was. And yes, this was a constant occurrence back when Donna was in my life. Back to the Donna Berzatto and the bear. And something that happened in the episode Fishes, where they're having their seven fishes tradition, is people kept acting like Donna's daughter, Natalie, who everyone nicknames Sugar, which is an insult of its own. It's basically mocking her because she used sugar instead of salt in a recipe forever ago. So Natalie is constantly getting blamed or treated like she is the one who's going to make things go disarray. And let me explain what I mean by this. Something that people kept telling Natalie was, do not ask her if she's okay. Don't do it this time. And they kept asking Natalie, not Donna the abuser. Nobody's asking Donna the abuser to not blow the lid. They're asking Natalie, who's a survivor, who's a victim of Donna's abuse, to not ask Donna if she's okay. And at this point, they're sitting on the table ready to eat. Donna has been raging chaos and doing her abuse fit for hours while preparing this seven fishes ordeal. And Natalie asked at the table, are you okay? And when that happens, everybody at the table is like, oh, and they're covering their face and they're acting like Natalie is the problem. Like they're acting like Natalie did this horrible thing. And like clockwork, Donna gets extremely abusive verbally and starts going at it with Natalie. Another relative actually steps in for a moment and they get also a rage fit from Donna. And shit just hit the fan and Donna blew the lid as she would. But what really bothered me was that nobody goes, Donna, that's not acceptable to act that way, to being asked if you're okay. You can't abuse people like that. Nobody's holding accountable the abuser in the room. Everybody is scapegoating the daughter for asking if she was okay. Because quite frankly, Donna wasn't acting very okay and she did not look very okay. And that was a very acceptable and reasonable question to ask to someone who's acting that way and who had been acting that way for hours. That bothered me. And this is one of those moments where I really want to invite you to think about how ingrained in society, how deep it goes, this strategy, this behavior, this way of seeing things from the lens of always appeasing and managing the abuser and blaming and shaming the people who have been getting abused by this person. Poor Natalie is so enmeshed with Donna. On a different episode with Donna, at this point, Natalie is about to give birth. She is in a really tough situation because everyone she knows who is nearby is working at the restaurant and are not answering their phones. Her spouse, who is, by the way, a wonderful man, is traveling and he's literally in the air. He doesn't have any reception because he's in the middle of his flight. And Natalie goes unexpectedly in labor. And I have to say, even that scene where she's just desperately calling everybody and she's trying as hard as she can to find someone. And you see that moment where she's like, fuck, I'm going to have to call her instead. And she does, is heartbreaking. And when Natalie and Donna are at the hospital, something that Natalie did was confront Donna with the truth about what it was to have her in her life growing up. And something that Natalie says is, Mom, I ask everyone if they are all right too much. If someone feels sick, I start to feel sick. In order to make you happy, I made myself sick. That shows the lack of boundaries between Natalie and her mother, Donna. That shows how Natalie is constantly on an emotional flashback of, am I in trouble? I need to make sure that I'm not in trouble. I'm going to keep asking everyone if they're all right and make sure that I am not in trouble. Which shows either an attachment style that's anxious or the disorganized where you have both anxious and avoidant traits in it. And that reassurance and constant need to get reassured that everything is okay. It's a really common thing for survivors of trauma, especially complex trauma. And as someone who has struggled with that, even though I've done a lot of healing in terms of asking people if they are okay, I sometimes catch myself saying the thing anyway. And it's a reflex. Like you don't even realize you're saying it. You just like, before you know it, the question, are you okay, just came out of your mouth for like the 10th time, even though the other person has told you 9 times already that they are. And something that was so striking about this particular scene is that Natalie tells Donna, I always put you first. And Donna's response to that was something along the lines of, oh, that is so sweet. And I hated that because that is like the hallmark of emotional incest, a parent that depends on their child to fulfill their emotional needs in the way another adult should be. Children are not extensions of parents, and children should not be putting their parents first all the time. It actually should be the other way around. Parents are the ones who choose to have children, and they are the ones who should be choosing to put that child first. And here, Donna shows how unaware she is of how fucked up her parenting is and the implications of it. And she actually thinks and voices that she thinks it's sweet her daughter puts her first. And something that I did like about the scene was the fact that Natalie goes, no, mom, that's not sweet. That's fucked up. Because it is. And I agree with Natalie. It fucking is. Something that I have noticed in parents that are enmeshed with their kids is that they call the kid their best friend. And I feel like growing up for me, something like that would be seen as, oh, that's so nice that they're so close and that's so cute. But now that I know better, I realize, that ain't cute. Absolutely not. A parent is a parent. They are not supposed to be a best friend, and they're not supposed to be enmeshed with their child, and that is abuse. I feel like the reaction, the trauma response that is constantly happening around her is a lot of freeze and a lot of fawning. The people around her who have her in her life and are playing into the dynamic, they either have to freeze when she's being abusive and not say anything and just sit on the table quietly and look down. And you see that on the episode Fishes. The majority of the table is just looking down or looking somewhere else into the room and not saying anything, or fawning. Are you okay? How can I help you? How can I make your life easier? How do I please you and make you happy and put you first? Not healthy. iShips is basically the episode where I see how it could go if I was to face my Donna with the truth. And I would not be surprised if it goes exactly like that or even worse. Something I want to point out about this episode, and I am yet to see a video or any clips pointing this out. In this episode, Natalie's in the hospital giving birth and she's having really bad contractions. And Donna starts with rubbing Natalie's head. She's basically like stroking Natalie's hair. And when I saw that scene, it felt off to me because I know what it is to have my own Donna do that to me. Like they just keep touching you obsessively and constantly. And it just feels like over the top. And Donna's doing this with Natalie's head, and then she's rubbing Natalie's back. And something that I feel like it was intentional because the camera is literally following Donna's hand. Donna's hand keeps rubbing Natalie's back and keeps going down, and now she's at her lower back. And then Donna's hand moves slowly into Natalie's glute area. I remember having a very visceral reaction in my body when I saw that scene because I know that. And what it feels like to have someone do that to me. Now, the Donna in my life would do that with my head or with my feet. She loved rubbing my feet. It was the weirdest thing. It felt very icky. And that's the thing about emotional incest. Emotional incest is a form of covert sexual abuse. It's very insidious. And because it's not 100% clear and they're not touching the parts that usually get considered part of sexual abuse, it just gets dismissed and often overlooked. But here's the thing, and this is really important, and this is something that one of my former therapists told me. It has the same impacts as overt sexual abuse. That's why it is a form of sexual abuse. I will never forget when I started doing the deep dive on emotional incest because it took me a long time to realize that was even a form of abuse I had survived. I was sitting right here in this couch and I had started a video from Brad Shore, who is a therapist on YouTube who has a lot of content on emotional incest and childhood abuse and narcissistic parents, etc. At this point, I had a therapist already suggest that I started looking into emotional incest. But the way they introduced the term to me was, I don't like the name. It just sounds really bad for what it really is. But you should look into this. I'm looking at this video. And when Brad said it is a form of covert sexual abuse, I broke down crying and it was like the floodgates open. And I felt so heartbroken to realize that was me. And it was also one of the times when I started to finally take in that the reason I was struggling so much wasn't because there was something wrong with me and I shouldn't be because it wasn't that bad, but it was actually, this is why you're struggling so bad because it was that fucking bad. There's something really icky when someone's touching you in a way that feels uncomfortable. And some of the ways in my own Donna would do something similar in terms of touching me in a way that wouldn't necessarily be overt sexual abuse, but it still felt very uncomfortable and icky. It would be things like she would stick her hand down my shirt and start arranging my breasts and my bra. And if I would complain or say, like, what the hell, she would start yelling back and going, like, oh, I'm just helping you because you don't know how to arrange your breasts. Like, they don't look good in that bra. And yeah, you're supposed to do this like the way I do it. And she would just be so intrusive to do things like that and not realize that it was just wrong. Other things that she would do that I would say felt to me like a violation of my autonomy over my body would be storming into the bathroom when I was taking a shower. And I remember vividly the one time she did this. She would do this a bunch of times, but there was this particular time when she stormed in and I was literally getting out of the shower. I was soaking wet, butt naked. I cannot tell you exactly word by word what I said. What I can tell you was that I was really angry and I want to say I screamed and I yelled something because she was yelling back. And I remember her coming at me, ready to beat me. And I just crawled into a ball in the bathtub and started begging and crying and screaming to not hit me. And I just kept doing it over and over. And then she stopped and started saying, "Ugh, I'm not even gonna hit you because at this point I feel so bad already and I haven't even touched you." And she kind of made it about me, like making her feel bad, and then took that narrative of now I am making her feel awful, and she walked away. And looking back, I think I did trigger her shame. And I think the other part was that I was being loud enough that anyone walking outside would have heard what was going on. And something I've noticed in these types of people is that they care what people think about them, like a lot. And a lot of times I just kind of stood there and didn't really fight it. But the times I did, my Nana had this thing, and she would say that my body belonged to her, saying things like, they've known me since I was a baby. They used to change my diapers. I don't have anything they haven't seen. They have the same stuff anyway. And something they would say is, that all belongs to me anyway. It's all mine. And they had this thing they would say, and it came from a storybook that they used to read me about how I was always going to be a baby in their eyes. And not only a baby, but a baby that belonged to them. They felt entitled to me in a really sick way that I wasn't able to see as abuse until way later. With Donna in the Bear, when she does this, she goes on to say to her daughter, Natalie, something along the lines of like, you have your dad's ass. And Natalie fucking flips for a moment and goes, Mom, that's fucked up. And I see Natalie experience this a few times during the episode. Like there's times where she lands back at, Mom, this is fucked up and you're behaving inappropriately. But quickly it turns back off because Donna is in this scenario, in this room, the person that's also giving her comfort. There's no other comfort. Her husband's not there yet. None of the other relatives, friends, anyone else is there yet. You can, in a way, argue that you're seeing Natalie's betrayal blindness go on and off like a switch. And I was referencing the switch last week with Donna's mood swings. Like in the episode Fishes, you see Donna's mood swings go up and down, up and down. And the same thing goes with Natalie. Like she goes up and down. She goes from realizing Donna's fucked up to, I'm going to forget about that for a moment because I'm hurting and you're also comforting me. Another thing Donna did during that episode was abuse the staff at the hospital. She was raging at Natalie, she was raging and abusing the staff. And the thing with this is Donna's making things worse for Natalie. Because here is Natalie now in pain giving birth, trying to make up for the fact that her mother is abusing the staff, trying to work through how do I make sense of this cognitive dissonance of this woman is fucked up and yet I fucking need her right now too. It's just a terrible situation. And it impacts the care that Natalie's gonna get. Staff that's antagonized and depleted by someone who's being abusive to them is not gonna give the best care to her daughter. But Donna doesn't have that in the fucking radar. I side with Dr. Ramani in terms of what Donna was trying to do during season 2 when she shows up to the restaurant opening but doesn't actually go in. I want to give my 2 cents on this thing. One thing that Dr. Ramani Durvasula, who's an expert in narcissistic abuse, pointed out in one of her videos about the bear was she did not agree with some of the reactions that were hinting that Donna was being self-reflective now, and now that she was getting sober, she realized that going in would have hurt the kids, and in order to protect them, she walked away, and that is why she left. Ramani did not think that's what she was doing. Ramani thought that was being yet another attempt at manipulation, reinforcing this victim, woe is me, martyr narrative. And it was definitely not a show of redemption on her part. And I agree with that. Here are my 2 cents on it. Donna shows up, stays outside, and I think she was hoping that somebody was going to come to get her. And to me, it came across as fulfilling that grandiosity supply. People come to me. I don't go to them. I'm here. Somebody's going to come get me over here. And I want to hear them beg for me to come in. And there came her really sweet son-in-law, Natalie's husband, sees Donna out through the window. He goes outside and he's begging her to come in. She's playing her woe is me narrative and he's giving her all the reasons. This would mean so much to the kids to have you there. And he gave her the supply she wanted. That was exactly what she wanted, to have someone come all the way to her, to beg her, and then for her to be able to play the martyr. And how did she look more like the martyr? By leaving. Because if she would have gone in, she would have had to face, A, that her kids are doing well and thriving without her, that when they cut her off, they actually were able to turn around this restaurant and turn it into a magnificent business venture. She would have had to face the shame of potentially being confronted by the kids about how abusive you've been. And that's not supply for them. She got more supply out of walking away, playing the victim. And the woe is me, nobody cares about me, and I'm just going to leave and nobody's going to give a shit, right? That plays into the narrative. And that, dear listeners, is vulnerable narcissism at its highest level. From the research I have done, I have come across the information of borderline personality disorder having different types. And there is a particular type of borderline that goes hand in hand with vulnerable narcissism. And I think that is what we're seeing here. And it goes along with how my Donna in real life behaves as well. There's so many things that I have done that Donna hasn't shown up for. And for a very long time, I used to feel so sad that they wouldn't show up. And then one time they did. And it reminded me of why it's actually a good thing that they never show up. When they did show up, they acted so loving and so supportive. And then the moment we were alone, they criticized my hair, the outfit, the songs, the stage presence. You didn't do this like me. If I would have been you, I would have done it like that. That didn't look good. Sometimes it is the best thing for Natalie and Carmi for Donna not to show up. It's good for me when my Donna doesn't show up. When they don't show up, it's not to protect the kids. It's for their own supply. It's for their own narrative and their own gain. And I can see that now. Now I want to switch to Adolescence before this becomes a 10-part ordeal. Adolescence is a very ambitious show. And what they have done is something incredibly unique. I feel like people going to school for filmmaking will probably get assignments of watching at least one of these episodes to see how impressive they shot the show. This show, for those of you that are not familiar with it, A lot of the first reactions I started to see first were centered around the fact that every episode was a one shot. And when I saw the reactions at first, I thought it was like a very long shot in the episode, something similar to what Mike Flanagan has done with The Haunting of Hill House. He did an episode where it was like 16, 13-minute long shots. And there's like two of them in the show. And there are these long shots that feel like almost like theater like, where the actors are just doing the whole thing. And it really feels like a play. There's no stopping and going. It's not constantly interrupted. They're just staying in character and going through that script for a long time. And that's what I thought was going to happen with the show. So when I started watching the episode around like 20 minutes in, I was like, how long is this one shot? And here's the thing. And I'm going to share this hello trauma brain moment. And I'm curious to hear if any of you also experienced this or if it's just me. When I watch Haunting of Hill House, for example, once that one shot starts, I feel like I kind of owe it to the director and the actors and all the team involved in this really impressive shot to watch it in one view, in one sit, without pausing it, without looking down, without getting distracted. Like, I have to be with them on this thing. Like, they took all this effort to make it a one shot, and I'm gonna watch it in one view. And I was trying to do this for this show, and like 20 minutes in, I'm starting to realize that I'm not seeing where it cuts. I pause and I then look up and I figure out, oh, the whole episode is one shot. So I don't know that I can sit without moving and without pausing for like a whole episode. So I'm going to allow myself not to do the thing. But I even had a bit of OCD come up with feeling like I wasn't doing it the right way. That aside, I want to take an extra moment to say, from a cinematic point of view alone, this show is worth the watch. The amount of attention to detail, the organization, the practice, the care and effort these people have put into the show paid off. It really did. It's impressive. There's 4 episodes, each episode shot in one take, one uninterrupted shot. Episode 1 was triggering in terms of the fact that I started clocking in a lot of similarities in Eddie, the father in the show, with my real life Eddie. I clocked it in right away. There was something about their body language and how they handled situations and how they were handling what was happening that felt very familiar to me. The premise of the show, and it's not much of a spoiler because we find out early on, and I even saw the actor who plays Eddie, the father. The name of the actor is Stephen Graham, and he's also an executive producer and creator for the show. He discloses the premise in interviews and is very clear to say that, this is not supposed to be a whodunit. It's supposed to be about the impacts and the aftermath of this tragedy. The premise is this 13-year-old kid murders another of his classmates. Episode 1 is basically centered around the arrest and the police booking and basically the whole process of interrogating Jamie about the murder. And Eddie, the father, is there. And there is a scene in episode 1 when the interrogation is about to start and Jamie is sitting pretty laid back on his chair. And Eddie, the father, does this hand gesture as he's telling him, sit straight. And the tone and the way he said it, even the body language in Eddie, and how Jamie in 2 seconds sat really straight up in his chair. It reminded me of the Eddie in my life and how Eddie would treat their Jamie. So that was one of the moments where I was like, oh gosh, it's starting to feel a little bit too close to home. I have to point out, I survived on being able to pay close attention to body language, tone of voice, any nuances that could give me cues that would signal either safety or lack of safety. So I am aware that I am a bit more sensitive to things like that than the average population. Now, the episodes that really took me back were episode 3 and episode 4. I want to say to the people involved in those 2 episodes, the level of skill that went into those episodes is pretty up there. So basically, Jamie is the other character that has similarities with one of my other abusers. So the infamous episode 3 is where Jamie is getting evaluated by a independent psychologist. She's not meant to be his regular therapist. She's supposed to just do this evaluation. And when the episode begins, they show her footage of this fight Jamie had with another inmate. Then she goes into the room with Jamie. For most of the episode is the session between them. I'm aware that Jamie in the show is supposed to be 13, a teenager with a brain that's still developing, is not done cooking. I still want to call out the behavior that I am seeing as harmful on his end. And I mean, in addition to the fact that he actually committed murder and killed a classmate and seemed to fail to realize what that meant in terms of the consequences of taking a life. One of the first things I noticed in the Jamie in the show that was very similar to the Jamie in my real life is the mocking and the weaponizing of information. So the therapist was sharing some simple things about her grandparents. And I took that to be her attempt to not just look like this ominous authority figure, but more like a human being that also has her family and is trying to relate to him. And something that Jamie did was he began mocking her, mocking the way she called her grandparents and like little things, but the way he would mock her and the tone and the condescending vibe that it had really triggered me. And granted, given the age and what the show suggests in terms of Jamie having a history of being abused, I can also see that behavior being something kids do when they're trying to figure out if the adult in front of them is trustworthy and safe, which is push, kind of have like a bit of a push to what they're trying to do to see if they blow up or if they can handle it and they're actually safe to talk to. So the show did it brilliantly. It was just very eerie for me to see something that I was constantly witnessing being shown in a TV show like that. And something I want to point out is Jamie is interacting with a professional trained therapist. This is not someone who doesn't know what they're doing. This is someone who is literally doing these independent evaluations for a living. And I'm sure they've seen their share. Take that in. Keep that on the shelf because I'm going to come back to that very important part in a bit. Jamie has these two major blow-ups with the therapist. The first one, he stands up, shoves this cup of hot chocolate to the wall, and just screams and demeans this woman and inserts and defines his control. There's an expression he used, and it was something like, "Get that in that little fucking hair of yours." And you see her frozen. I want to focus on that. Somebody that behaves like Jamie, you learn very fast that not a lot of things work. I used to fight against my Jamie. We used to get in fights and I would punch back and we would be punching each other. And I want to say I was probably around 11 or 12 when I started to figure out that the fighting was not going to get me anywhere because Jamie was getting stronger by the fucking day. And there were a few things Jamie did that caused injuries. Like he kicked me once and I had a fracture. I never went to the doctor. I wasn't taken to see a medical provider for this. It was one of those things where like the people around me were like, "Oh, we'll just take care of it here." And I don't think my bone broke. I don't know what the severity would be if you were to have done a study on my thumb at the time. What I do know is this. It took months. It hurt to move it for a while. I couldn't use it well. And I lost the nail, and that was its own level of pain. And that took forever to heal. It hurt for a long time. And yeah, after stuff like that, you just learn to freeze. And that's what that therapist did. She froze. She was looking at him and I could see it in her face, like the disbelief of like, is this fucking happening? And is this kid doing this right fucking now? Am I safe here? I was worried for her. I really was. And I know what it is to be on the other end of that and to be looking like a deer in the headlights. And then there's a second blow up. And I want to say there was maybe a third one too. There were a few in this episode, but there's one blow up in particular that felt more triggering than the others. And it's the blow up when, again, the therapist is still sitting down. Jamie stood up again and he's right in front of her, topping over this woman. And she's frozen. He's standing completely still. And he does this one last thing, one extra thing to make her feel terrified. And it was, as he is standing still, he screams and shoves his body slightly forward, Almost like I'm going to hit you, but he doesn't actually hit her. And she flinches. I know what that feels like. The Jamie in my life would do that. I call it fronting. It would be like this fronting thing, and it wasn't actually leading to physical harm, but it was like that threat of, I'll do it. And the way I take it, the way I would perceive it when my Jamie was doing it to me, and the way I perceived it even and how Jamie did it to the therapist is they want for the other person to not just be scared, to not just be sitting there frozen looking at them. They want them to be fucking terrified of them. And when that would happen to me, it was almost like it wasn't enough to just see someone completely still, not pushing back, not saying anything. And it's that power that comes from feeling like you have control over scaring the other person. It's fucked. It's sadistic. And I can tell you from being someone who has been on the other end of someone doing that, it fucks with you. And the Jamie in my life would sometimes do that. And I saw them do it to other people too. They would start mocking them and saying things like, you're a fucking coward. Look at you. Did you see how pathetic you look just flinching like that? And they would do things like that. It was just, yeah, not easy. Not easy to witness. Not easy to experience. And it really fucking took me when I saw that on a TV show. Because that, again, brings to awareness how fucking textbook some of these people in my life have been. And I didn't fucking know it. Now, the therapist does a few things. She gets out of the room at one point to compose herself. She was very, very good at keeping it together as best as she could in front of Jamie. But she did take a break, go out to like the vending machine area, and fucking had to take a few heavy ass deep breaths to get herself together. And again, I'm going to pull the shelf again and say, this is a trained professional, y'all. Someone who does this for a living. Parentheses, they're still a fucking human being for starters. And I'm bringing this up from the lens of if that can shake a professional adult, can you imagine what it would do to a child that doesn't know what's going on? And let that sit there. Some of the things I want to note from Jamie's way of interacting, of his way of answering the questions, you could tell when she was getting close to something that hurt, because that's usually when he would blow up. He was defensive of his father. She did ask about his father, and he did admit that there was one time where he took it out on the shed. It sounds like he got violent, but he didn't actually hit anybody. And that's the thing right there. That's emotional blindness, folks. Emotional blindness is someone who's abusive gets minimized. Jamie needs his father to survive. He is the guardian that's navigating this whole legal process along his side. So being able to admit that Eddie is abusive and violent doesn't look very good for the cognitive dissonance in the brain of this 13-year-old. So yeah, it got shoved as, oh no, it was just the shed the one time. I would bet money that the father was violent, ragey, and verbally abusive constantly. And that video that I referenced last week, where I saw some things that were helpful, but I also felt like some of the things did not quite apply to me. In terms of the things that I thought were spot on is that therapist was suggesting that the behavior we were seeing in Jamie towards the therapist is probably how his father treated him when he was younger. Because kids don't just do shit out of the blue. It's not random. That's learned behavior. That was another moment where I got very suspicious of the father again. Because I was like, I was already having my red flags from my intuition on episode 1. Then I noticed he was defending him and trying to avoid talking about it. Then his behavior alone spoke for itself. A kid that does not know abuse doesn't act that way. It would be very rare. And here are a few things I want to share about the Jamie in my life. The Jamie in my life did serve time in a juvenile facility. And though I will not disclose the actual crime they committed, I will say it was not for murdering a classmate. That was not what they did. So right before juvie happened, at this point, Jamie was getting forced to do rehab. There was already issues with substances that were glaring fucking red and a lot of behavioral issues. And for a very long time, I used to say it was just a phase and it's going to go away and they're going to get better. And I kept waiting for that. But in reality, what kept happening year after year was things got worse. And things came to a head one day. Forget where the heck we were coming back from. I'm in the car with these people. I'm in the back seat. Jamie is in the passenger seat. Donna is driving. And I'm using all code names. These are not the real names, y'all. And Jamie went into a fit and starts punching the dashboard and the passenger door. And my Donna was telling them to stop. And they look at Donna and they had this look on their face. And there's something I noticed with people of this caliber. There's a moment where they pause and you can see the moment where the thought with the horrible behavior went through their brains. Jamie goes on and grabs the steering wheel from the passenger seat, mind you. And they're strung of their Donna at this point. And they turn the wheel. And now we are facing incoming traffic. We're on the opposite lane. And a car is heading straight at us. I start to hear the honking from the car that's about to hit us. And Donna's trying to get the wheel to go back to our lane. And Jamie's not fucking letting go. And this is the point where I break the silence from the backseat and I start yelling and cursing and calling him horrible things and trying to get them to wake the fuck up and literally stop trying to kill all of us and the people that are also coming the other way. And here's something I learned about this experience. Things slow down. When you're in a situation like that, everything just almost feels like it's in slow motion. And along with the slow motion, there is this feeling of hopelessness that deep down knows there's not much you can do. Right at the last second, Jamie lets go of the wheel. We get back to our lane, avoid a fucking massive collision. And Jamie turns around to me now, fist up in the air. And I saw two thoughts go through Jamie's mind. I saw the thought that said, I think this is a bad idea and I wouldn't do that if I were you. And I saw the fist lower slightly. And I thought for a second, he's not going to fucking do it. But then I saw the moment the next thought went through their face. And this thought said, fuck it, do it. And do it now. And I didn't have much time to do anything but just sit there and watch as his fist landed on my thigh. That moment changed everything. That day, I realized I was fucking done. Done enabling, done justifying, done saying it was a face, done with everything. And I called the police, and the cops didn't believe me. And the massive bruise I was going to be sporting on my thigh, of course, wasn't showing. And there is a lot more to this story that I will not share today. What I will share is that I did go to see Jamie in juvie once. This incident had happened already. And in many ways, I'm not going to lie, a part of me was like, though the cops didn't help me and there wasn't much of a consequence at the time they assaulted me, I understood that people like this, the consequence comes one way or another. If I would have been a consultant for adolescents, the one thing I would have told them, and maybe they had the idea and thought it would have been too much or it would have gone too far to do this, but regardless, I would have suggested them having the makeup department add some signs that Jamie had been involved in a fight. Because Jamie looked pretty unscathed. And though the footage showed that he pretty much was winning the fucking thing, I think it would have been more realistic to show some signs that he was in an institution with other kids that probably had similar behavioral issues. And here's why I would have suggested that. As much as I was fucking pissed and done with Jamie, I'll never forget when I went to that fucking facility. I only went once. First thing is, I was not quite thoroughly educated and informed on what I was signing up for. So basically, like, they round up the people that are going to be going in to visit, all of us, and they sit us down in this area. And basically, they give us a disclaimer on how now they're going to bring a dog to go around. And the dog is going to be smelling for anything that we're not supposed to be having inside the facility. And even if the dog is confused, if one of us triggers the dog, every single one of us will be stripped naked and thoroughly checked. Let me tell you, when I heard that, I just wanted to get up and fucking go, forget it, I'm not going in. But I realized very quickly that would probably come across very suspicious. So I just sat there frozen, and luckily the dog was fine. We went through the thing. We all got in. let me tell you, it's really scary to hear that because I know I wasn't bringing anything. I knew I didn't have anything on me that could trigger the dog. But if the dog is having an off day or if someone else is also bringing something, then I'm going to suffer the consequence too. Like that to me is like worst nightmare case scenario. Stuff where me behaving to the top of my abilities wouldn't necessarily save me from an awful consequence. That doesn't even belong to me. So then they set you in this area and it was kind of like an outdoors pavilion type of thing. And you're sitting there and you're waiting and all these kids are wearing the same fucking thing and you're looking at their faces to differentiate, the rest of the inmates from the Jamie in my life. And Jamie looked fucking different. It took me a minute to realize Jamie was walking towards me. And the reason it took me a minute was because Jamie had gained a lot of weight. And up to this point, Jamie was really athletic and very fit kid and always taking care of their body and exercising and all these things. So that was already striking to me. But honestly, the weight was the least of the things that caught my attention. It was their face what fucking did it. Jamie had been in a fight, I guess, right before this. And Jamie had one of his eyes bloodshot red, huge bruise, and just half of their face mashed. And as someone who can hold a conversation, and I even do this podcast, I didn't know what to fucking say. We both cried. For a moment, I didn't care that they had punched me. I didn't care that nothing happened to them when they punched me. I didn't care about all the other things they have ever done to me, because it's a lot of things. And I have basically gone no contact with them for 17 years or so. There have been some periods here and there where they've been on the phone with me briefly. And one time, they did apologize to me. It wasn't a very deep apology, but they did say something along the lines of, sorry for everything. That's something that I noticed Jamie and the show did. After the blow-ups, they would apologize. And I saw a therapist say online that that's a good sign that they understand and they're apologizing. And here's what I'm going to push on that, especially given my background and all the times people like Donna would say sorry to me but still do the same thing. Saying sorry to me doesn't mean a lot these days. Because Jamie says sorry and blows up 20 minutes later. To me, causing harm, apologizing, and then committing the same harm the next day doesn't mean anything. Might as well not even say I'm sorry. You feel bad? Okay, that's great. How about you let that fuel your behavior tomorrow and you don't do it again? It's hard. It's really hard. Now, I want to briefly touch on episode 4. That episode captures the experience of having Jamie, Donna, and an Eddie in the room, and what happens besides all the attempts to avoid the blow up. This episode basically goes forward a few months, focuses on the family of Jamie, who is dealing with the aftermath of finding their place in society when everyone knows that their relative, Jamie, has committed murder. And it's Eddie's 50th birthday, and the wife is cooking him a special breakfast. And the little things start just falling like dominoes. Somebody vandalizes the van. And at this point, I already picked up on Manda trying to manage and Lisa, the daughter, trying to manage him to see if they can keep him calm. And Eddie is keeping it fairly together. But I feel like the trauma response got activated in terms of they got this obsession with, I'm going to clean it right now and I'm going to take care of it right now. And everybody just step away, I'm going to clean it. I'm going to handle it. And basically the paint that they use, that's not coming off. He's not going to be able to clean it off. So then everybody has to stop what they're doing. And now we're going to go to the store to paint the van and fix it. And then at the store, one of the employees recognizes Eddie and starts talking nonsense about how he thinks that Jamie was in the right. You could tell he was uncomfortable, but trying to keep it together. And it's just one thing after the next. And here's the thing. That car ride to the store alone was triggering for me because I know that feeling of like you're trying to act like everything is okay and everything is normal. And there's a lot of eggshell walking. And one thing Eddie and Amanda started to do was reminisce about their younger years and started to make reference to their sex life, which made their daughter feel very uncomfortable. And it kind of goes back to that emotional incest. Like, there are some things that your kids should not be hearing. And your sex life is one of them. They get to the store, and here's where I started noticing some of Amanda's problematic behavior too. Amanda was holding on to Lisa like she was going to fucking go away somehow like a balloon and flee. Every time Eddie was acting up, she would just start touching the daughter. It was subtle things like touching her hair, touching her shoulder. I clocked it in because I am a survivor of emotional incest. I wonder how other people feel about this, but it just didn't feel like motherly concern. It was almost like this obsessive reflex thing and blurring the boundaries with their daughter. Ugh, I don't know. It was very icky for me to watch. And this sometimes happens with other shows. I'm watching a situation where I know the people in my life would have blown up and I'm kind of like expecting the shoe to drop, but then it doesn't. And I'm like, oh, I guess it's a way it could have gone better. And I guess that's how it should have been for me. But in this show, I am on the edge of my seat waiting for Eddie to fucking blow up. And man, does he fucking blow up. He's basically paranoid and hyper vigilant about who vandalized the van. Goes after this kid he thinks did it. We don't even know for sure the kid did it. And quite frankly, even if the kid did it, there's ways you can go about this. You can talk to the family of the kid. You can press charges with the police. Taking out your rage and frustration on the kid and physically shaking him and throwing his bike and then grabbing the paint and throwing it all over your car. Like, it was the amount of dysregulation, failure to control himself was astounding. And I could see the moments where like the rage would come in and then he starts raging at the security from the store because they're complaining that they damaged the parking lot and need to fix it. And he's fighting that over there. And then he's telling the wife and the daughter to get in the car. And just the way, the fucking body language, I know that better than anyone. I've been there. And it's this sick, twisted game of eggshell walking, a blow up, and then literally following the instructions that Eddie gives him to the T to try to appease him so he doesn't keep blowing up. I want to focus on Lisa's point of view. Like, take that in. You see your father raging at a kid, raging at a security officer, and now yelling at you and your mom to get in the car. I was scared that he was going to rage at them, and I'm sure they were too. Then another thing that happened in the show that was so interesting was Jamie calls, and Eddie doesn't tell Jamie he's on speaker with his mom and his sister listening. I know I've said this before, and I'm going to say it as many times as I need to. A lot of these dynamics thrive in a lack of transparency. There's no clear communication. Jamie calls, and he thinks he's just talking to his dad, but he's actually talking to all three of them. He doesn't get told that all three of them are listening. Jamie calls his dad to let him know that he's going to plead guilty. And it's so fucking awkward because after that, then he finds out that his mom and his sister are listening, and it's just tragic. I know these dynamics so well because I've lived them, and I could really feel the pain. How each of these characters are just struggling to keep it together, and they're suffering like this every fucking day. As the episode comes to an end, something that happens towards the end is they're getting ready to go out to the movies, and Eddie puts on this new shirt. And I swear, I almost threw my remote across the couch. I didn't. But I I had to pause the show and like compose myself because I see a little crocodile on the polo shirt. And I know that fucking crocodile. There is a French brand called Lacoste. And usually their products have this crocodile on them. And the Jamie and the Eddie in my life love that fucking brand. And let me tell you, I could... It's just out of all the brands they could have picked, out of all the brands, out of all the things, just the fact that they picked the favorite brand for two of these people in my life, it was just like, wow. I can't make this shit up. I can't. But there it was, the fucking crocodile. So far, up to this point, I have been horrified by the show. I have been like, oh my fucking God, I cannot believe they capture them. This is them. This is them. I can literally point out now to a show and go, that is what you are asking me to go back into contact with. Right there. Watch it. I had not cried. I felt seen. I felt validated. I felt like somebody fucking understands. I felt like somebody captured what happened and put it on a show. And the last scene of this episode, which is the last scene of the show, Eddie goes into Jamie's room as they're playing this beautiful song by Aurora. If you have not heard Aurora, I will link her website to the show notes. She's a fantastic artist. Aurora's song is called Through the Eyes of a Child. Mm. And Eddie sits in Jamie's bed and he's crying, and I'm feeling it. But the part that broke me was when he grabs on this, I think it was a teddy bear, and he goes, "I'm sorry, son." And I think the reason that hit me so hard was because though I saw Eddie apologize to my Jamie, and they would say sorry after unspeakable abuse, I felt like in the show, this was like a real apology. Like it felt like an apology of, I'm sorry for letting you down. And I don't know that Jamie ever got that. I hope he does. That's the apology I never got. And I don't know that I ever will. It was so sad. It was so sad and so tragic. And we need to do better. We all need to do better. This is a fucking problem. And shows like this are really stirring up the conversation, and I'm glad they are. I heard somewhere that I think in the UK they're gonna start making this like a required viewing for the kids in school. Good. They should look at the shit. And the adults need to be looking at the shit. Like this should be required viewing for everyone involved in those kids' lives. This is not a fucking joke. It's not a fucking joke. It's not overreacting. It's not over dramatic. People are fucking suffering. And the heartbreaking part is, as much as I have a lot of anger towards the Jamie in my life, I know why they are the way they are. I saw it in the making. It was heartbreaking. They should have not been treated that way. And if there's anything I would ever say to them if I ever were to talk to them again, it would be, I don't know that I would want to run down how they hurt me, but I think something that I would like to be able to tell them is that I am really sorry I sided with Donna and Eddie and saw them as the problem. I am really sorry that I bought the narrative that something was off with them and it came out of nowhere. Because that was one of the biggest lies we ever lived. He didn't come out of nowhere. What happened to them should have never happened to them. I didn't protect them. I know I was also in need of protection, but still, the shame's there, the guilt's there. And it's not simple. It's not simple. And there's this scene in the show where Amanda and Eddie are talking and they're basically trying to figure out what happened and if they were the problem and the reason Jamie was that way, if they made him. Slightly later, the daughter, Lisa, who I really identified a lot with, who was constantly managing them and being the source of comfort for the mother when the father was raging, even though to me that was emotional incest. Poor girl needs to get the fuck out of there. But she just kept time and time again doing a lot of funning and a lot of appeasing and a lot of trying to distract them and cheer them up. And towards the end, Eddie looks at Amanda and goes, "How did we make her?" And that hit hard for reasons I will not disclose today, but it really did. Both of these shows feature a lot of appeasing and actual walking around abusive people. And one thing that I will point out when I look at the three main abusers in my life is, and this might sound a little wild for some of you, but this is how I experienced it. The Donna Berzatto in my life was able to get away with a lot of abuse that she was not held accountable for. And I think the reason was because the Eddie and the Jamie in my life were so overtly abusive and so obvious. And the shadow they cast with their abuse was so big that my Donna was able to hide right behind that shadow and act as abusive as she wanted to. And at the end of the day, she could always point towards Eddie and Jamie and go, "I'm not abusive. They are. And that is real abuse. And that's worse than me. And what I'm doing is nothing compared to that." And it worked. And that is why I knew from the get-go Eddie and Jamie were abusive. And that is how I missed Donna for years. It took me so many years. I just realized she was abusive like a few years ago. Not many. When I saw The Bear, I remember telling the close peeps in my life, if you ever catch me about to break no contact or about to invite these people to like a major life event, I need you to sit me down and put on fishes and ice ships. And now I can add Adolescence episodes 3 and 4 to the list. And by the end of those 4 episodes, I should be good to go and out of the weeds in terms of trying to go back. One of the things that hit me recently as I have been reflecting on these shows and preparing for this episode is that my abusers are so out there. They're so fucking bad that when they get played in shows, the shows are getting nominated and the actors playing them are getting nominated and winning awards. Jamie Lee Curtis won her first Emmy in the category of Outstanding Guest Actress in a Comedy Series for playing fucking Donna Berzatto in The Bear in the episode Fishes. And a lot of people are arguing she should get another one for her performance in Ice Ships. I know Adolescence is getting a lot of attention. That show is new, so the award season has not happened yet. But I would definitely be shocked if they don't get at least nominated. And honestly, I think they should win some fucking awards because what they did was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. The actor that played Jamie, Owen Cooper, I think this is the first time he's ever done an acting job. Wow. This fucking kid. Amazing. Incredible performance. Both shows are stellar watches. Trauma set aside and all the things that I've discussed in terms of the quality of the show, both are excellent. And I'll say it again, these shows are bringing into the table very important conversations that we need to be having. I think that as a society, we owe not only the current generation, but future generations to come to do better, to break the cycle, to pay attention. Providing meals, school uniforms, and taking kids to school is not where parenting ends. Parenting continues in monitoring what your kid is watching. What are they doing on their phones and their computers? And there is such a thing as being intrusive and over monitoring your kid. But you cannot go to the other end and completely just let them be their own thing and they run themselves. That's not how it works. Kids need help. And the same goes in school and in after school activities, in the friends group, and any interaction that our kids are having is really important. I'm trying to be more intentional of paying attention out there because this is not just for the parents. Like, I don't get to just throw up my hands in the air and go, well, I'm not a parent. I don't have to do better. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to educate myself. No. Yes, I fucking do. I have friends with kids. I see kids all the fucking time. And kids are as much a part of my society as the adults are. And they fucking matter. None of us get to throw up our hands up in the air and say, not my responsibility. There's a lot of things we are not responsible for. Sure. But we are responsible for one thing. Ourselves. Ourselves. We need to do better. And these shows are a stark reminder of what happens when we don't. If you are a survivor of abuse, I would love to live in a world where Jamies don't murder their classmates, where they have parents, schoolmates, teachers, mentors, neighbors, a whole village of people that are involved in supervising what they are doing, are paying attention to what's affecting them, that are there to help them when they get bullied and need help and protection, where girls like Katie don't get harassed and murdered when they refuse to go on a date with a classmate. A world where kids like Katie learn that bullying is not cool and is not right, and they get a consequence that is not murder. I would love to live in a world where eddies are not raging on strangers, taking down sheds. Imagine a world where we all go to therapy and work on the things that hurt us and stop passing that on to others. Imagine a world where a podcast like this doesn't even need to exist. Imagine a world where Donna Berzatto can go to therapy and the relatives and her community are working together not to enable her, but to prioritize the well-being of her children. Imagine a world where Carmi, Natalie, and Michael are able to go to therapy, set boundaries with Donna, and reclaim back the childhoods they lost to an abusive fucking parent. If you are a survivor of abuse who has stayed for a long time, chances are you've had plenty of compassion and you have justified the abuse to survive. Content telling you to feel worse for them than you already do is not for you and it's not for me. I hope this episode can give you a sense that you are not alone and that you're not going crazy if you find yourself struggling and getting triggered by these shows. In this week's healing invitation, I want to offer you a few things to reflect about. This invitation is part two. Part one of the invitation is in last week's episode, which is linked to the show notes. A little recap: last week, the invitation was to notice what type of content you are consuming and how much of it. Reflect on what the results are. For me, I have an invisible string that draws me to heavy drama shows that feature some form of abuse or chaotic environments. Though I am personally not ready to say goodbye to these shows I love, lately I have been trying to be intentional about adding palate cleansers. What this means is shows that are comedies or light shows that are meant to help me bring my nervous system down. Why does what we consume matter? Because our nervous system does not know the difference between reality and fiction. Shows like Adolescence and The Bear left me feeling triggered, anxious, and very tense. My nervous system can't discern that the show was not my trauma happening all over again. That is why having a palate cleanser or a lighter show to watch right after can be a good way to bring back my nervous system to its baseline. And also feel free to do breathing exercises to help bring your nervous system to safety. Please let me know in the comments how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the platform that you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you think could find this podcast helpful. Subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation via PayPal. I want to thank you in advance for your support. A little can go a very long way in helping the podcast reach more survivors that could benefit from finding this content. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you the best as you continue to navigate the challenges that we are facing in today's society. It is time for our farewell affirmations. I invite you to repeat after me. I welcome the belief that I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week and thank you for your presence.